What's up, DTYG? This is pretty weird. But I'm glad we get to keep going in James. I'm glad that we have the technology to meet in weird ways like this. So we're going to pick up right where Richie left off. He left off in verse 6. We're going to keep going verses 7 through 11. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll kind of work on it. It says, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remained steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful." Those are our verses. So, next, we'll outline it and work our way through it. You probably noticed that therefore in verse 7, right at the beginning. And so the first question we got to ask is how these verses, our verses, connect to the verses before them. So I've pulled up the verses that Richie went through the last time we met together, as long ago as that seems. And first, James addresses those who are hoping in their plans for the future. And then he also calls out those who are hoping in their riches. And to the planners, you who say, today or tomorrow we go into such and such a town, spend a year there, trade, make a profit. He says to these planners, the end is almost here. And all of your plans will get blown up. You can't make them happen. They won't have lasting value. Anyway, you're a mist that appears for a little while and then you vanish when the sun comes up. And to the rich, down here, he says, even your gold, your silver and your gold are going to corrode away. They're going to rust and disappear. And in both cases, he's saying the end is coming. Jesus is coming back. And it doesn't make any sense for you to lay up riches for yourself in the day of slaughter. It's like somebody going through the empty rooms on the Titanic while it's sinking and finding all the gold and silver. And the only reason the rooms are empty is because everybody else has fled up to the deck to try to get off the boat. You're down there thinking, oh, I'm getting rich, stealing all this stuff. You're fattening your heart on a day of slaughter. The end is coming. Jesus is coming back. So the question is, in both cases, both for the planners and for the rich, what are you hanging on to? What are you hanging on to and hoping in today, for today? Up here, are we hoping in and trusting in our plans for the future? At the start of the football season, or maybe basketball come the fall and next winter? Are we hoping in? Are we trusting in? Are we hanging on to the fun and freedom of the summer or freshman year of college? The end of being stuck at home? Or down here, are we trusting in? Are we hoping in? Hanging on to money, our stuff, maybe the security that they provide? For both, the end is coming. Jesus is coming back soon. And our plans and our money, they're just going to vanish, corrode away. So those are the verses leading up to our passage. Whoop, moved on me. There we go. And James says in verse 7, be patient, therefore. Be patient, therefore, until Jesus comes back, the coming of the Lord. So how do these verses connect? Well, if you're a planner who's been trusting in your plans for the future, he's saying, stop. Trust in Jesus, the Lord who's coming back. Trust in Jesus, not your money. And therefore, because you trust in Jesus and not your money, be patient until he comes back. And if you're I said money. So if you're a planner, trusting your plans, stop doing that. Trust in Jesus. If you're rich and you're trusting in your money, stop trusting in your money. Trust in Jesus. He's coming back soon. And then on the other side, if you have been beaten down by the rich or the powerful, or maybe you just don't have, you already know that your plans aren't going to come to anything, and you don't have any money to speak of anyway or to trust in. For you, trust in Jesus. Be patient until he comes back. He's coming soon. So for both parties, that's the message, and that's where the therefore comes in. So for this passage here, there are three sections. It's pretty simple. First, you have an example, a real life example of waiting patiently that comes through right here. That's number one. And then number two is how not to wait. Starts there in just verse 9. And then finally, here's an example, here's how we should wait. Here's how we should wait. There's also a promise kind of implicit in there for those who wait patiently. So that's our outline. So let's start with the real life example number one. In this real life example, James tells the church to mimic farmers. And what do farmers do? They get almost worthless seeds. I mean, the seed doesn't give you a whole lot. Almost worthless seeds. They get those and they stick them in a hole because they know that they need those seeds to become plants with fruit that they can eat and that they can sell. And they get the seed, it's in the hole, they cover it up with dirt so that it's hidden and invisible, and then they wait. They will add water, they give the plant nutrients. Really, they give the ground nutrients. At first, they can't even see the plant, but mostly they wait. And if they planted tomato seeds, they know they're going to get a tomato plant. That's what they're hoping for and expecting. And their livelihood depends on that seed becoming a tomato plant and coming up and feeding them and their families. They wait patiently for it. All the waiting and watering and all that stuff is worth it because they know what's coming. And Christians should mimic farmers. They know that Jesus is coming back. They can't control when he comes back or how he comes back. But for the Christian, everything depends upon his coming back. So they wait patiently. Just like farmers act like farmers, they water, they weed, they give nutrients. Christians act like Christians. They love, they serve, they seek God in prayer and in the Bible, and they wait. So that's number one, how we should wait. That leads us into number two, how not to wait. Let's go back to the text. He starts in verse 9. Don't grumble. We don't wait by grumbling against one another, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. Why would grumbling or complaining against someone else, why would that be why would this be his warning? Why would this be his command of how we should not wait? I think we can put most of our complaining into one of two categories. Either I complain against you because you have something that I don't, and I hate you for it. That's what we call coveting. Or I complain against you because I feel like you wronged me in some way. So I go to my wife or my friend and I start complaining about you. And James issues a pretty severe warning here. He says, don't do that. Don't grumble or complain against one another, so that you may not be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Remember, we said Jesus is coming back soon, the coming of the Lord. Well, he is the judge. And James tells them they're going to be judged if they complain or grumble against one another. And why? So the question I have is, why is grumbling this serious? And Also, how is grumbling related to waiting patiently? I think it goes like this. What am I doing when I covet your stuff or your money? Well, I'm trusting in money and stuff, not in God. I'm acting like money or stuff is the way to happiness. And I'm mad because you have more of that happiness than I do. So I've fallen right back into the trap of the rich that James warns against at the beginning of chapter 5. What about when I feel like you've wronged me in some way? One of two things is going on. I've either forgotten that Jesus, the judge, is coming back soon, and he's going to come back to set all things right, or I've forgotten that Christ has forgiven me. So if he's forgiven me, I should forgive others. If I don't, if I choose to hang on to bitterness and complain against you, then I haven't really experienced the forgiveness of Jesus. So this, verse 9, is how not to wait. And it leads us into an example of how to wait. So let's look at that. How do we wait patiently? James says that we should imitate the prophets, particularly Job. And how did they wait? How did the prophets wait? Well, they were wronged by others. Some of them were even murdered. And most of them had no money or stuff to trust in. Job had a lot at the beginning, but even he had everything taken away. God took everything away from him, even his health. Yet, all of these people waited patiently, and they endured all kinds of suffering and ridicule and betrayal. But in the midst of that suffering and ridicule and betrayal, they were happy. We regard them, we consider them, it says here, as, in verse 11, we consider them as blessed or happy. Why? Because they trusted God. They knew that he was in control of everything, and they knew that the hard things were only temporary. And they knew that the worst thing that anyone could do to them, the worst thing that could happen, was death. Just death, that's it. And then eternal life. And in the midst of their suffering and trials, they got to see God show up in ways that no one else did. That normal people, happy people, those people never got to see God show up in the same way that they did. So all the suffering that Job went through, at the end, he hears God speak to him directly. He got to hear God up close and personal in a way no one else did. He experienced God's kindness then and generosity in a way that the thousands of normal people around him never did. So he was blessed. He was happy. And we consider him that way. And the question is, how does this impact our lives today? And the simple answer is that we should trust God. Not our money, not our plans. Trust Jesus. Wait for him patiently to come back. He's coming soon. He's going to set all things right. And we should do that without complaining against one another. But we should imitate the prophets who endured so much without complaining. They knew that they're always in control, and always kind God would make them happy, ultimately and forever happy. But more specifically, I think we can say more for like today. I'm really glad that God planned for us to go through this passage right now, in the midst of a weird season. My muscles are atrophying as I sit in my chair and my couch day by day, and my skin gets paler and paler. Okay, I can still go outside, but still, this whole social distancing thing is strange. And I know many people, their plans are gone haywire, and they are concerned about the economy, all those kinds of things. So what does this have to say to us now? Well, for Job and the other prophets, they waited patiently, and they knew that they could trust in God. But even more than that, they got to see God show up in his compassion and mercy. Look at the very end of verse 11. You've seen the purpose of the Lord in the story of Job, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. So I would say that right now, you and I, as Christians, ought to expect that God's going to show up in ways that we have not seen him show up before, precisely because we're in the midst of something hard. where we're having to stay away from one another. It was difficult for me to do the live stream on Sunday rather than being with all of you guys and with the rest of God's people. Those things are hard. But in the midst of our suffering, that's when we should expect to see God's compassion, His mercy, His goodness, His kindness in ways that we haven't experienced them before. So, with that encouragement, you are loved and you are missed.